This is The KJ Show. The KJ Show with host Dr. Katherine Johnson is a mix of breaking news and practical advice on the many ways in which the energy industry can affect you and your family. Katherine will combine energy updates and conversations with leaders in the energy efficiency community. So please welcome your host, Dr. KJ.
Hello and welcome to the KJ Show on my new YouTube channel, which I found out just had 3,000 viewers. Yay! Thank you so much. Keep it up. I'm really excited. Today there's been some earth-shattering news in the climate world, and climate change isn't what it seems. And science has finally come to light. So I'm going to talk about that today, and I'm really excited. And I have to say, nothing that's been revealed in the last week is a surprise to me because I've been talking about the climate change pseudoscience for a long time. Anyway, but I always like to start out with the fun stuff of breaking news. You cannot make this up. And today's episode, I've got to start with some really ironic things. So there's the Conference of Parties, also known as the COP, which is a UN group of people, representatives from state, countries, and manufacturers, and they call them stakeholders, and they're gathered from all different parts of the world. And every year they descend upon some capital somewhere or someplace. Usually it was in the UAE, which I always thought was ironic that they were meeting in the desert to talk about getting rid of fossil fuels, where that's where all the fossil fuels are. But this year, they're going to go to Brazil, and it's starting November 6th, which isn't tomorrow. The problem is that in the rush to host this COP conference, they've had to make some major improvements to the Brazilian infrastructure of the city of Belém, which is, I guess, one of their largest cities. And that's in the lower Amazon region. So guess what? They are destroying parts of the Amazon forest to actually build conference centers and logistical infrastructure to support a conference on climate change. It is so ironic. And Prince William's going there tomorrow, and everybody who's worried about the environment's flying in on their private jets. But they said that basically that the business and banking leaders will meet in Sao Paulo to discuss the climate finance, but they're destroying, while local leaders will gather in Belém for later negotiations. So they're going to actually go to the Amazon rainforest. But they also said that they need to spend about $310 billion by 2035 to prepare for rising seas, hotter days, and other climate impacts, which we'll find out right now in the next couple episode segments isn't true. But they are actually building the Amazon forest to build roads, carrying down the Amazon forest to build roads for the climate summit. Can the irony be any worse? Or the hypocrisy? A new 4-lane highway was put in, cutting down tens of thousands of acres. There's a picture of that, along the protected Amazon rainforest being built before the COP30 summit that aims to, quote, ease traffic with host more than 50,000 people, including world leaders. The state government hopes it's going to help the highway sustainable credentials work and help with the locals and the conservatives. But the locals and the conservationists don't believe it. They aren't buying in. They also point out that the Amazon is a really big, important carbon heat sink, but cutting down trees doesn't help either. Along with a partially built road, there's towers on each side. So these are the logs that are piled high in the forest that cleared, which stretches more than 8 miles through the Amazon. The other problem is, and there's another picture, diggers and machinists carved through the forest floor, paving over wetlands to resurface the road. So this isn't one of the native Amazonians, and he basically and his family says, our harvest has already been cut down. We no longer have the income to support our family. We currently has received no compensation from the state government and is currently relying on savings. He worries that the construction of this road will lead to more deforestation and in the future, and that now that the area is accessible to more businesses. Yeah, let's open up it to more businesses and have even more coming in, which is what they're doing. They're actually trying to open up to increase the cruise ship traffic. He says his community won't even be connected to the road because there's walls on each side. So for those of us who live on the side of the highway, there will be no benefits. There will be benefits for the trucks to pass through. If someone gets sick and needs to go to the center of Bellum, we won't be able to use it. So they're building a road that's not even accessible for the inhabitants that live there. The road leaves two disconnected areas of the protected forest, and scientists are concerned it could disrupt migration patterns in the ecosystem and all kinds of problems that happen when you start cutting down massive amounts of trees in the Amazon forest. The government state infrastructure secretary Adler Silveira says that the highway is one of 30 projects that's happening to prepare the city and modernize it. I thought we wanted to protect the rainforests. And we have a legacy for the population and more opportunity to serve people for COP30 in the best possible way. So they're doing this for like a 2-week conference. According to BBC, this man said it was a sustainable highway, but he said he had to have wildlife crossings and has to cover bike lanes and solar lighting, and new hotels are being developed, and the cruise ship is being expanded to accommodate more tourists, which to me would be the absolute last thing you want to do, is have more tourists swarm the Amazon forest. I mean, I thought we were like trying to save it. The Brazil federal government is investing $81 million to expand the airport capacity from 7 to 14 million passengers. And they have a 50,000 meter park they're developing. Why would you develop a park? Just leave the Amazon alone, and include green spaces, restaurants, a sports complex, and other things. So the point is that they're building they're building a conference center in the middle of the Amazon rainforest in the name of climate change, in the name of helping to bring stakeholders together for climate discussions when they're destroying the forests that they're supposed to be saving. Where is the outrage? If I were the COP organizers, I would have said absolutely not. If you really care about the environment, you don't do this. You don't cut down 8 miles worth of trees and make the inhabitants poor. Anyway, I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson. You're watching the KJ Show on the Bold Brave, on my TV show, with Dr. KJ, and I'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to easysense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's easysense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
And welcome back to the KJ Show with me, Dr. KJ, on my new YouTube channel. I have to remember to keep saying that. So today I'm talking about exposing the truth about climate change science. And I've been talking about this on my previous show for a long time. And now, though, it seems like maybe I was a prophet. And guess what? The science is finally backing up what I've been saying. The science has always said. Climate change is not going to destroy humanity. So there's a new study that came out that has everybody upset. That basically dismantles the notion that CO2, carbon dioxide, is driving climate. Apparently not. And I'll explain these graphs. We'll just keep them up. So the study finds the temperature gradient between water vapor and CO2, the temperature gradient between water and the temperature and water vapor drive climate change, not CO2. So basically, water vapor is what's driving climate changes. Water vapor is pretty important and innocuous, actually. Science is never really settled, as I've said before. So a new study, Frontier, succinctly unsettles the prevailing paradigm with surgeon-like precision in under 20 pages. Then the authors develop a cogent critique of CO2 drives climate presumption, and they basically tear it apart. So not only does CO2 have no discernible effect on climate, you know, the next one, but any alleged human-induced or anthropomorphic role is hypothetical, is not detectable either. So here it is. There is no discernible effect caused by humans that causes increase in greenhouse gas emissions, and rather it's water vapor and temperature changes that cause climate change, not humans. Wow. So we are going to spend $300 billion to support climate change activities that aren't needed? I think that $310 billion could be used elsewhere, maybe fighting important diseases and getting rid of hunger and building wells. You know, practical solutions that aren't nearly as sexy as climate change. In recent decades, there's been a concerted effort to assert that it's settled science to characterize variability in the atmospheric CO2 concentration. It's assumed to be modulated by human activity as a predominant effect in climate change and greenhouse gas effect. Let me just point out the hubris, the pride of that statement, thinking that we humans have so much effect that we can actually affect climate to a degree where we cause the demise of our civilization. That sort of doesn't make sense when you think about the effect of one hurricane or one wildfire or one earthquake or one tsunami or any other natural disaster that causes much more devastation and impacts than humans. Not that we shouldn't. No, nobody's in favor of pollution. Believe me, I'm a big proponent of, energy efficiency because you use less energy. I'm a big proponent of a clean environment, but clean in the sense of clean as in not polluting, not clean in the sense of using renewable power, generating power from solar panels that are mined by children in Africa. Moving on. The key points from this study, though, said that CO2 only contributes 4 to 5% of the greenhouse effect. So it's only 4 to 5% overall, whereas water vapor, clouds contribute 95%. So blame it on clouds. Of that 4 to 5%, a contribution from CO2 is 4% attributed to human activity. So it's 4% of 4%, including like fossil fuel emissions, but though 96% of the 4% of the contribution of CO2 is attributed to natural processes. Let that sink in. So all this concern we've had since the 1970s about the climate world, that we're going to destroy the climate's Al Gore and his inconvenient truth, it's all lies. It's all false. And I'll explain a little bit more how those lies became so embraced. But water vapor and clouds, for which water vapor is responsible for, dominate the atmospheric radioactive effect, or ARE, while CO2 contributes only 4 to 5%. Man-made CO2 emissions are only 4% of the total, meaning that the actual evidence says that the changes in temperature, global warming, global cooling, precede those of CO2 concentrations, thus challenging the assumption that CO2 drives temperature, which is the underlying science behind the quote science of climate change. And this figure, another figure or not, basically shows that the long-term changes in atmospheric concentration cannot be demonstrated to have exerted any effect in altering long-wave radiation measurements, much less surface temperatures. So in English, or in normal people speak, basically they're saying it's not CO2, it's water. It's water vapor, it's clouds. We can move on to another chart. That's what this chart says. So this CO2 is said to have exactly zero effect on the temperature. Zero. And that it's the temperature gradient that makes the surface level temperature increase between, different degrees. But this increase is attributed to the greenhouse effect, which is mainly the result of the temperature gradient, not from us. So the effect of this non-condensing radioactivity gases is zero, zero, um, zero. So, moreover, a hypothetical doubling of the CO2 concentrations would result in a temperature increase of zero, while the role of CO2 in photosynthesis is important but it becomes negligible too in return for the contributions to the surface energy balance. Meaning photosynthesis is also not going to cause a whole bunch of problems either. So the greenhouse gas effect and greenhouse gases equal the atmospheric radioactive effect and radioactive gases. I'm not an atmospheric scientist, I know one, but basically the terms like greenhouse gases and greenhouse effect are actually misrepresentations of what's happening in the real world atmosphere. They're lies. And we've all been forced to believe them and rapidly forced to believe them. Heat transfer for both a greenhouse and in the real world surface temperature is dominated by convection, not radiation. Meaning they didn't even get the science right on how the heat is transferred, and that atmospheric mass is much denser near the surface than it is up in the sky. Makes sense. And that atmospheric mass increases the heat capacity of the atmosphere and decreases the surface radioactive cooling, and radiative cooling increases the global mean temperature. So, as a non-scientist, non-atmospheric scientist, basically they're saying that the climate change is not caused by humans, not that we want to destroy the climate by the planet by any stretch, but most of it's caused by natural occurring effects when the CO2 and the water vapors and the clouds get together and they either heat or cool the planet. Where have we been spending our resources educating our children, indoctrinating our children on climate change and how we're all going to die and creating climate anxiety? It's a sham. And I've been saying this for a while on my last show and on this one too, but I'm kind of excited that I never thought I'd see this in my lifetime. The green science scam is over. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host you're watching the KJ Show with me, Dr. KJ, and I'll be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
And welcome back to the KJ Show with Dr. KJ on my new YouTube channel that now has 3,000 views. Thank you, 3,000 subscribers. I'm really excited. And today I am pulling back the curtain and peeking behind the truth of climate science, which I've been talking about for a long time. Now, this has not endeared me to my colleagues in the energy efficiency community, but I've always pointed out that to be a good steward of the planet, we don't want to pollute it, and we want to use energy efficiently and effectively, and we don't want to waste anything. So you can be energy efficient and still want to not believe in the climate mumbo jumbo, which is now being truth. So not only am I shocked and surprised, most of the world is. And guess who's had a huge turning point? Bill Gates, the man who's been touting doom and gloom, who's been growing, breeding mosquitoes, who wants to use nuclear power to power all of his AI. He had a moment of truth, a moment of reflection, which can't be that much surprising because he did have houses in the, on the ocean. But basically, he is now shaking up the climate discussion by saying that he has 3 truths that have emerged from this study. And it's very surprising and actually quite refreshing that someone of his stature is finally telling the truth. The first truth is he wrote a letter to the world, like we care, right? But that shared 3 truths about climate change and the longer term implications of this new study. Here is truth. Truth 1. Climate change is a serious problem, as it is, of course, but it's not going to be the end of civilization. What? I mean, we don't have to spend trillions and trillions of dollars that we don't have to save us from a solution that isn't going to kill us, and that's caused by water vapor and clouds and heat, and CO2 is naturally occurring anyway, and there's no such thing as greenhouse gas effects. Yeah, pretty much. He basically says that the most extreme projections of future climate change has been dialed back considerably in the past decade. And Gates explains correctly that the current consensus that by 2100, the Earth's average temperature is going to increase between 2 to 3 degrees Celsius than it was in 1850. Okay, doesn't mean we're going to die. But the consensus has rapidly emerged, not because the world has rapidly reduced gas emissions, but rather because scientists have recognized that those extreme scenarios that have dominated the climate research were actually off target from the beginning. So they started with the wrong baseline. Now, as someone who evaluates programs for a living, the baseline is where you start. That's the only way you can truly get a measure of how much your program affected or changed behavior, or saved energy, whatever it is. So you got to get the baseline right. Well, apparently the climate baseline's been off. Now, all my friends in the evaluation community who spend lots of time and effort and are very well educated in how to establish baselines, they never pointed this out. Wonder why. In recent years, the projected global temperatures increases to 2100 have been successfully revised downward. So it's not even as bad as we think it's going to be. Earlier this month, the Norwegian group, DMV, which is actually a consulting firm, issued its most likely projection for global temperatures is going to be a 2.2 Celsius degree increase and the achievement of net zero emissions by 2090. So in other words, we're not going to die. The achievements would not hit the targets of the Paris Accords and the UN framework, but they are far from the global existential threat, according to the projections of, get it, the same policy from the UN, the International Governmental Panel on Climate Change. So they are backtracking. So Al Gore saying that we're going to die is wrong. Can he get back his prize, his Nobel Prize? The new consensus is so robust that Gates is actually now taking the point that if you don't believe this new idea, if you don't believe this new science, you are actually the true climate deniers. And having been called a climate denier for a lot of my career, which I find highly offensive, I won't return the compliment, but I will point out that you have to look at science, and science is continually evolving. This is no such thing as settled science. We're still discovering dinosaurs that we didn't even know existed. We're still discovering species that we thought were extinct that aren't. Scientist is not science. That's what I love about science. You continue to learn new things all the time. Truth number 2, temperature is not the best way to measure our progress on climate. This is what Bill Gates says. Couldn't agree more. He says, for many Gates, this seems obvious. The global temperature doesn't tell us anything about the quality of people's lives. Absolutely true. Consider the remarkable progress in 150 years with respect to human impact in extreme weather events. Basically, if you look back 150 years ago to now, human life, on average, overall, is better. Now, there's still poor people in the world, and we need to do better. And we've had a few world wars in the interim, and a lot of people have died needlessly. But it's better than it was, say, bubonic plague times or even the 1850s. Way back in the 1870s, global time where temperatures are supposedly ideal, 50 million people died globally from extreme weather events. 50 million people. Particularly the El Nino event of 1977 and 1877 and 1888. The 1870s also saw the Great Midwest Fires of 1871, which killed 2,400 people. The Baltic Sea flood in 1872 that killed, and a 1875 Midwest locust swarm that had 12.5 trillion locusts, which basically destroyed crops. 1878, China had a typhoon that killed 100,000 people, and the U.S. experienced 6 major hurricanes in 1870. We've had 3 in 2010. Okay. It's not widely appreciated, but 2025 is supposedly on track for the lowest global death toll from extreme weather of all of human history. Yes, we've had hurricanes. Yes, we've had Melissa. Yes, we've had terrible events in North Carolina, but it's still better than it was overall if you look at all of history. Part of the good fortune is that because the Northern Hemisphere is well below average in terms of tropical cyclone activity, but 2025 also identifies a long-term trend of improving lives due to advances of science and technology. Not to mention things like the polio vaccination, smallpox vaccination, other things. So truth number 3, this gets into that, is basically that health and prosperity are the best defense against climate change. Absolutely. Gates says that development doesn't depend on helping people adapt to a warmer climate. Development is adaptation. So basically, climate change is important, but we have a lot more important things to work on. And if you're really worried about saving humanity, why don't we focus on eliminating malaria, eliminating tuberculosis, eliminating things that will that really do have a devastating effect. And this is what I've been saying for a really long time. In Africa, tuberculosis can prevent tuberculosis for about 37 cents per child. 37 cents. We can eliminate tuberculosis. Highly curable, highly fatal. But because it's little black children that are dying, people don't care. They should care. I'd rather put all the billions of dollars that we're supposed to funnel to climate research into eliminating tuberculosis. Why don't we start there? I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host. You're watching The KJ Show with me, Dr. KJ. I'll be right back.
Mike Zorek, a 3-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and 2 fourths. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk. Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life.
And welcome back to the KJ Show with me, Dr. KJ, here on my new YouTube channel. And for fun stuff or for energy talk, I would love at some point to have a telephone call. said I would love to have my friend John be able to call in. But in the meantime, he can send in comments, and anyone else can, and I will be happy to read them. One of the things, though, that I thought, and I didn't really know where to put it in the show, so I'm going to put it here, is the media reaction. They're actually just falling over themselves. They're absolutely having complete meltdowns because the media has actually been supporting this story, this thing that climate science was, the global climate change was correct, and that the science was perfect and true, which has never happened either. So now the media is just going, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Bill Gates says it's not happening. We're now really they're really upset, and now they're saying things like from CNN, this is a stunning claim. Politico soft pedals climate. Axios escalates the debate with scientists. The New Republic, we shouldn't be listening to people like him. And Michael Mann, this is horrifying. Climate change represents an existential threat, exasperating global security threats and threatening water and food, leading to massive damage. It's like a game of soft climate change denial bingo. Jonathan Foley said, I stopped listening to Gates years ago. You should too. Michael Oppenheimer, the words are bound to be misused by those who would like nothing better than to destroy the efforts to deal with climate change. And apparently this is a big view from the departure Gates's view from his climate change, which now has evoked a sense of alarmism. The New York Post wrote that Gates once said climate change could be worse than COVID. It also reminded that Gates also wanted to avoiding climate change disaster will be one of the greatest challenges humans ever taken on. But Gates critics are now saying, wait a minute, maybe the billionaires' topic shift is remarkable or not remarkable. The point I guess I'm saying is that people who the CNN, the what do they call it? Legacy media, mainstream media, whatever they call it, have been promoting this, as has my industry. We have a lot of people who spend a lot of money and make a lot of money on getting worried about climates and the changes in climates, and we have to invest in all these things. We have to basically upend our entire economic engine to create EV infrastructure of electric vehicles, which, by the way, still use electricity generated by coal and fossil fuels, and natural gas. So it's never, to me, it's always been this really silly argument that we're going to somehow completely upend our entire economic structure to save humanity, when humanity's never really been in that much of a disaster. It's not really ever been the end of our demise. And we also forget that we've had climate events, the Little Ice Age, we've had global warming and global cooling happening for centuries, millennia, and humans managed to survive. Now, it's amazing how humans have survived in all these different climate extremes. A couple of shows ago, I talked about how they found evidence that people would migrate from the Arctic tundra to warmer areas, and that these nomads, our ancestors, were able to adapt to the climate and adapt their hunting and eating patterns. They were adapting the way in which they use tools. So, give us some credit. We are actually much more adaptable than we think, and that is what has led to the development of our current civilization. It's adaptation, it's creativity, it's technology. So yeah, I'm a big fan of having new tools that use less energy. I love LED lights. I'm not a big fan of electric vehicles, but that's my own personal prejudice. But I do think, and I've seen in my lifetime, a lot of really important things happening that reduce the energy usage in manufacturing, reduce the energy usage in making, in our schools. Those are all good things. And a lot of times there's a lot of other good benefits to come from improved energy efficiency, improved health, improved comfort, improved safety. So I'm a big fan of energy efficiency. I am not a big fan of saying that climate change is the reason we need to do it, and that climate change is a bad thing. Climate change is natural, it's normal, and the earth is remarkably resilient. So the other problem I've always had with my climate change friends, advocates who do call me a denier, basically has been in their hubris, their belief that somehow humans are that important to the ecosystem. We can do damage, sure, but that damage is usually short term. I was in Australia a few years ago during those devastating wildfires. We could see the wildfires from Sydney. They were horrible smoke. Thousands, millions of animals died. The koalas died. It was just horrible. Guess what? It's been a few years. The island that was destroyed by the wildfires, it's coming back. Koalas are coming back. we had help. We've had help to humans have helped the animals, repopulate and reproduce, but it's been minimal, and it's come by maybe 5, 6 years. By the way, all that smoke and carbon that was extruded into the atmosphere, nobody ever talked about it in their climate change studies. I asked about it. What about the effect of the wildfires in Australia on climate models? Crickets. You know why? Because 95% or so were absorbed by the ocean, which is exactly what this new study has been saying, that water vapor absorbs these things. Water vapor absorbs CO2. It's not man causing temperature changes. It's happening naturally. And the ocean is a big carbon sink that isn't even included in most weather models. So how can you overlook the effect of the oceans or the effect of forests in the climate models and think that we somehow humans are more important than trees and oceans in terms of affecting climate? We have our moments, but overall, the wildfires of the past centuries were caused by what? Natural disasters. Now, the wildfires in California, that's another issue. And it was probably and should have been prevented, but still, nature comes back. Nature is remarkably resilient, and we don't give them enough credit in that. We don't give the animals in our world and the bugs and the little creatures that will live well beyond us the credit to say, maybe humans aren't the most important thing in the environment in the world, and maybe we can't control the climate weather any more than we control the ocean tides or we control the sun rising and setting. We can change our clocks and fool us, but we're not going to affect the sunrise and sunset of the earth. We're not affecting the spinning of the earth. We're not affecting anything that actually makes a difference and actually affects our lives. So why would we think that a few little degrees that humans cause is going to destroy civilization? I can tell you, follow the money. It's all been a hoax and a scam to have what we call watermelons, green on the outside, pink on the inside. It's been a scam, and I'm so glad Bill Gates finally figured it out or admitted to it. You probably knew that a long time ago. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson. You're watching the KJ Show with me, Dr. KJ, and I'll be right back.
Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
And welcome back to the KJ Show with me, Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host, Dr. KJ. And today I'm peeling back the curtain behind the climate science, or actually exposing the truth of the climate science. And I'm going to give a little bit of a history lesson too. But ironically, as we found out with the new study that clouds are responsible for global warming, guess what else is? Because we've cleaned up and we've eliminated pollution, the amount of CO2 has increased in our atmosphere too. Could pure skies be fueling our planet's heating? Another study from University of Exeter says yes, and that attributes to global warming since 2001 because we've been actually cutting out CO2 or SOx pollution. Reduced sulfur means fewer clouds, and that means increased heating. Okay, so cleaning up the planet by reducing pollution can also cause global change and global warming. I know we shouldn't even think about these things, but these two scientists they looked at NASA data from 2001 to 2019 and found that there's been a drop in the Earth's sun's reflecting power because there's fewer sulfate aerosols in the air. Clouds became darker and less reflective, so the more solar energy is trapped, it increases warming. So basically, by cleaning up the atmosphere, we have clouds that don't absorb as much heat and therefore create a warming climate. Now, this is another study that seems to have been ignored by most everyone in the industry. And these are not, these are not like conspiracy guys. These are true scientists. But the other thing is, by cutting SOx emissions, they, quote, lost the white cap of pollution that once brightened clouds. And especially over oceans, and without those bright reflective droplets, the sunlight now permeates deeper into the oceans and the atmosphere. So does this mean we shouldn't get rid of smokestack industries? I don't know. It seems like the Earth is doing a real good job no matter what we pump into it, right? So the model suggests that up to 2/3 of the observed warming could come from this effect, far outweighing the direct impact of increased carbon dioxide. So yet another unintended consequences. By cleaning up the air, the clouds are less reflective and warming increases. So not everyone agrees, of course, but the University of Reading confirmed that larger cloud droplets, but sees no evidence they get brighter. And the findings also continue to say, well, it doesn't matter, don't pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. We still need climate policies. Sure. We still need to worry about the dangers of greenhouse gases. But actually, we don't. And that's a really tricky thing. And I dug back into my notes from years show a while ago because it's back in the news and it's really relevant. So I'm going to do a little bit of a history lesson here. Most climate change scientists do not believe that the global warming is happening. Climate scientists, a lot of people who say climate is changing are not scientists who study climate or study atmosphere. They're geologists, they're biologists, they're other kinds of scientists, but they don't study the interplay and the complexities of the atmosphere. A letter signed by 50 leading members of the American Meteorological Society warned about the policies promoted by the environmental pressure groups. The policy initiatives derive from highly uncertain scientific theories. So there you go. Meteorologists don't think there's climate change occurring or global warming happening either, even though NOAA, who is a government agency and was trying to stay neutral, kind of, fudge the facts and politically had to say yes, they really don't. And most scientists who study this is their job, don't agree. There are based on unsupported assumptions that catastrophic global warming follows the burning of fossil fuels and requires immediate actions. The scientists, the meteorologists do not agree. Those who signed that letter represent the overwhelming majority of climate change scientists in the United States, and of whom there's 60. They also found that the 1995 report that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the one that sort of opened up this whole notion of Paris Accords and all that, was widely believed to prove that human-indicated climate change had occurred, but the draft document did not say that. Rather, the politicians cherry-picked a few words and created and moved it around and created the notion of climate change is caused by human activity. They basically rewrote the findings for their own purposes. Where is the outrage? Why did we spend all these millions of dollars, trillions of dollars on something we don't need to worry about? What happened was the policymakers' summary, which became the take-home message for politicians, was altered to scientists' conclusions. So the scientists didn't write these conclusions that said that climate change is induced by humans. It was the policymakers. Well, what do they want to do? They want to enact policies that are going to control how we eat, what we eat, how we use energy. We get rid of our, upend our entire economic system, create probably, I hate to say it, a one world government. But the point is that it's policymakers that were delivering this message, not true scientists. And the Frederick Seitz, who is the former head of the United States National Academy of Sciences and wrote a really great book that I have quoted extensively in previous shows, said, in more than 60 years as a member of the American scientific community, I have never witnessed a more disturbing corruption of the peer review process that the events led to this IPCC report. So basically, you have peer review. Scientists are really good at trying to pick apart each other's findings and conclusions and evidence, and peer reviews are considered to be a robust, independent sort of, making things actually true, because scientists want to make sure that they can replicate their experiments and their findings are correct. Policymakers didn't like that. They wanted to create an agenda for promoting climate change caused by humans so they could enact policies that would somehow solve this problem that didn't need solving. In other words, create money and programs that we needed to spend money on. They also found out that the measurements made that show that there's been no global warming by NASA satellites. There's been no global cooling between 1979 and 1944. There's no credible scientific body has ever said that climate change threatens the collapse of civilization, much less the extinction of the human species. That's never been said. That was policymakers. So what happened is our children the children are supposed to die in the next 10, 20 years. And unfortunately, young people think this is true. So they don't want to have children. They're committing suicide. They have climate anxiety. We have to have, kumbaya groups to help them feel better about the world, because the world is a scary place. Guess what, kids? The world has always been a scary place. And the scary things that our fathers and grandfathers faced were wars, depression, famines, things that are really bad and scary, not climate change, not, oh, it's getting too hot or it's getting too cold, because that isn't really going to be a long lasting effect. And it isn't as bad as you think it is. So please understand, the world is a scary place, but it's not because we human beings made it scary. It's because the world is scary. Most of the scientists don't agree with this stuff. Another thing that said that was really interesting is they had a part of the study was that climate change is happening and there's going to be a mass migration, which hasn't happened. There's going to be more natural disasters, which I just talked about how it's actually fewer natural disasters than there were in the 1870s, and that crop yields are decreasing. That's not true either. So all of the harbingers of doom, all of the theories that climate change is caused by humans and we're going to die by 2050 if we don't do something really important like build electric cars and get rid of fossil fuels, it's all false. It's all a sham. And I really hope this message gets carried far and wide. Still doesn't mean we don't need to use energy efficiency widely. Obviously, I'm still an energy efficiency person, but let's be honest about it. Let's be truthful. Let's keep it in context. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host on the KJ Show with me, Dr. KJ, and I'll be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical. What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to easysense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders supporters. That's easysense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation.
And welcome back to the KJ Show with me, Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host. And I've been talking today about understanding the climate science that doesn't matter, it doesn't work. But since we're just dispelling myths, I should have called this Mythbusters. I have another myth that I want to talk about. It's basically the fact that we have a map of the world that is fundamentally wrong. And this map has been developed since the 1500s. And guess what? The African Union is actually mad because the map distorts the size of Africa substantially, and it makes it seem it's not as large and vast as it is. The African Union has joined a campaign calling for the widely used Mercator map, which is the original map, which makes Africa appear smaller than it is, to replace by this one, which actually reflects the continent's relative size. So the Mercator map is the one on the first one, and then the one that they want to use is the new one. And it emulates a globe, but it has drawbacks too. Of course, everything does. So there's African Union Commission Deputy Selma Malika told Reuters that the size of Africa is misrepresented on maps, so the world's perception of the continent is also distorted, and including media attention and policy, which is true. We do not pay enough attention to Africa, which is a very large continent. That might seem to be a map, but in reality, it's more than that. By correcting the map, they aim to shift the perceptions and highlights to a true scale, power and potential of the African continent. The campaign explained in a slideshow. Basically, they said members to correct the map campaign are encouraging global entities to adopt the Equal Earth Map, which was developed in 2017 by a cartographer, Tom Patterson, and his colleagues. Patterson's map actually shows what is known as an equal map. It shows the true relative size of the countries and continents, but their shapes are distorted. The Mercator map, the original map, just kept the shapes, but actually distorted their sizes. And so the problem was that the original map, I don't know if we have a Mercator map, was actually developed in 1569. You think we would have come up with a new map by then? 1569, to help by Joris Mercator, a Flemish cartographer. It allowed explorers for navigation purposes to straight lines. However, it was useless. It was useful in 1569. Probably not much usefulness now, right? I mean, we have GPS, we have much better navigation, and it does distort the size of Africa. And it was very useful during the age of exploration and European colonialism, but it became the de facto world map. But the map in Africa, this map, Mercator map, actually says that Africa appears to be the same size as Greenland, when in fact Africa is 14 times larger. So let's think about the fact that we have been having a map that has not actually been an honest representation of the Earth and the globe. Well, I understand, the Earth is a sphere, so it's going to be hard to get a sphere shown on a flat surface, and I don't have enough geometry to understand how that can do that. But the point is, with the advancements of NASA satellites, with the advancements of everything else, why haven't we updated the maps in our classrooms? Why haven't we sort of said that, Africa is a much larger and more powerful continent than, maybe we're comparing it to Greenland? So why? And why do we basically ignore Africa? Africa made the news in this week too, because apparently Nigeria is killing Christians and has been doing so for quite a while, and Trump doesn't like it. So Africa is a powerful continent that we, the rest of the quote world, has ignored. We shouldn't. And I think it's time they get a map that actually shows their true diversity, their true strength, and actually helps them move into the world too. We would like everyone. Technologically, advances should raise up all peoples, not pit one against the other. And that's the other problem I have with EVs and solar panels. Guess what? All those recycled, Nat can't recycle them, EVs and solar panels, they end up back in Africa, polluting their environment. So they're still treating them, it's called green colonialism. Same thing that happened for them before. So if we really want to make a difference in the world, and I think we do, I think we need to start being a little more equitable and fair to our African continent neighbors, and also help them rise above using the technologies we have. But let's start with the tuberculosis vaccinations, please. I'm Dr. Catherine Johnson, your host. You've been watching the KJ Show with me, Dr. KJ. Thank you so much, and I'll be back next week.
This has been The KJ Show. Tune in next week as Catherine shares her insights to current changes in the energy industry while drawing on her experience as an energy efficiency consultant for the past 30 years. Right here on The KJ Show.